Hey guys, today I'm going to share with you one of my favorite French recipes, a classic French onion soup. Every time we travel to France, I don't feel like I have arrived until I tuck into some tiny little bistro and have a bowl of this soup. But years ago, I figured out a way to make it myself, and now I can have it anytime I want, and so can you. So the first thing we're going to do is prep our onions. Now, the onions are really the star of this show, so they do take a little bit of work to prep, but really that's the hardest part. And it's not even hard, it's just time consuming. You want to take about 8 medium-sized white onions. You're going to cut them in half and then cut them into half moons. Then in a large soup pot, you're going to add some olive oil and some butter. Once the butter is melted and the oil is hot, go ahead and add your onions. To that, you're going to add a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar. The sugar is just going to help those onions sweeten up and caramelize a bit better. Once your onions reach that stage, you're then going to add some dry sherry. I love to add the sherry because it adds a wonderful sweetness to the soup and will give your soup a nice depth of flavor. But if you don't drink, that's okay. You can definitely leave it out and your soup will still be good. Then you're going to add your beef broth. Now the beef broth is traditional, but if you are vegetarian, you could use vegetable stock. I would just check it for seasoning. It's probably going to need a little bit more salt or maybe some herbs as well. Then you're going to take 4 sprigs of thyme, tie them up with a little butcher's twine and drop that in the soup, and then add 2 bay leaves and some minced garlic. You're going to want to put the top back on your soup pot and let that simmer just for about 10 minutes. You want to give the soup a chance to have all those delicious flavors marry. Then when it comes time to serve, you're going to take a heat-safe soup bowl. Now, if you want to be traditional, you could use a traditional French onion soup bowl, or I also like the soup bowls that have the little handles on them because that way they're a little easier to get in and out of the broiler. But either one will do. Just make sure it's heat-safe. And then you're going to top each soup with some slices of French bread. I know it's not very traditional, but I do like to use sourdough bread. I find that that bread is heartier and holds up a bit better under the heat of that onion soup. I also would recommend making sure that your baguette is at least a day old. You should pop it in the fridge to keep, because if you leave bread out on the counter, especially a baguette, the next day it's going to be rock hard and you won't be able to cut it. If you pop it in your fridge, it will basically hold up a bit better and then it'll allow you to actually slice it the next day. Top each soup and your bread with some grated Gruyere cheese. And at this point, there is no such thing as too much cheese. You really can have at it. The best part of French onion soup is that delicious, warm, gooey cheese. So go ahead and be generous. Then transfer your soup bowls to a cookie sheet. It'll just be easier to pop all of them under the broiler that way. Then you're going to take your cookie sheet and pop your soups under the broiler just until the cheese starts to bubble and turn golden brown. Then when the soups are done, I do like to transfer them to a dinner plate because they are quite hot after being under that broiler. And then to make them a little extra special, I like to garnish with a little bit of fresh thyme. I hope you guys give this one a try. It's a classic French dish that will have you believing that you too can make this right in your own kitchen and never have to get on an airplane. I'll see you guys next week for another delicious recipe.